Welcome to Abel on Air, the podcast of the Abel Academy. Here we get into conversation with people from different regions of the world.
What interests us? What have you experienced? And what has impressed you the most?
What is your perspective on the world?
And what can we learn from each other?
And Abel on Air, that is, Matthias Grote. And
Carmen Ulrich.
And now, have fun with the upcoming podcast.
My guest today is Miroslava Rosales. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a real honor to me to be here. So thank you so much to consider.
Yeah, good that you are here. So I'm really looking forward to our talk. You are a very exciting person and you work in science and also as an author and poet, and you have lived in various countries, in El Salvador, in Mexico, and now in Germany. And I would like to start with your home country, El Salvador. Can you give us a little insight into the life in El Salvador?
Okay, thank you for the question. Well, it's difficult to answer in few lines, but because my country is, I think, very complex. It's the smallest country in Latin America, so that's give very particular realities. We have one part of, I think, the half of the population living outside of El Salvador. So most of the population outside of El Salvador is living in United States. So we have long history of migration process. And also now I'm part of this process of migration. And also I have my family, most of my family living in El Salvador, but other part of my family living in the United States. So it's all this is it's a mix, because you have El Salvador context, but it's extremely connected with the reality of the United States. Also, we have dollar. We have a dollar economy. That's why it's very dependent of the economy of the United States. And in the last few years, we have had a lot of problems with dictatorship. For example, Nicaragua, this is in Central America, El Salvador is in Central America, so we have had problems with violence, social violence, political violence, and definitely it's El Salvador and Central America, I can say that it's a region that every day can give you a lot of surprise, in good and bad sense. So
you are used to be on the way, and you are used to have a lot of surprises.
Yes, and sometimes are not good. So we have all this context that is extremely difficult, but also we have very rich cultural traditions. So that is a little bit like a contradiction, because we have all this kind of erosion of institutions, but at the same time we have a lot of writers, a lot of poetry, a lot of art. So that is also, I think, it's something that what part of my PhD I'm dedicated to Central America studies, and especially El Salvador.
So can I say it's on the one hand a very challenging environment, but also a productive one?
Yes, I think I think maybe this reality that is extremely complex gives a lot of topics to write about, and I think most of the writers are very political also, so that's why we cannot separate the context and the literature, because it's extremely connected, and it's very
because there are also a lot of existential topics.
No, most of them I think are more political, social topics. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So Miroslava, you completed your master's degree in Spanish American literature at the University in Guanajuato in Mexico in 2019, right? And then you decided for a PhD in Roman Studies at the University of Wuppertal. Can you tell us how this came about?
Yes, very nice, because the first time I came to Wuppertal was in 2018, because I won a scholarship from the AD to participate in Sommerschule here at the university. And at that opportunity, I could meet my current supervisor, Dr. Kiaya, and I considered that would be great to work with him, especially because I know that for PhD you need to have a close feedback and to be in a very good terms. So I consider that it would be nice to work with him. And also I like little cities, and I think Wuppertal it's small, but also at the same time it's very well connected, because we have close Düsseldorf, Köln, Bonn, so it's small, but at the same time you don't feel that you are isolated. So that's why I consider it would be nice to be here, and also because of the working tradition, because obviously we have had a lot of thinkers. For example, Engels. Well, I live very close to Engels' house, so obviously that is part of what I was reading.
Influence.
Yeah, my influence, because when I was studying philosophy in Salvador, I was reading all these authors, and obviously now living in the city where it's a little bit connected with this, with my readings of my young times when I was young and beautiful.
They're still going on.
So I can be. That's why I was connected, and also because obviously Wuppertal has this long tradition of Pina Bausch tanzt theater, and definitely it's very, very. Or it's still very influenced in theater in Latin America. So there were a lot of reasons why Wuppertal was good for me and is good for me.
This sounds really great.
Yeah.
So, and what do you find particular challenging here?
Well, it's I think mainly, and that is not only the case of Wuppertal. I think all Germany. Is the situation of migration policy, because I can see like a contradiction, because in a discourse you can read a lot that Germany needs more workers, and they need more workers for health system, for different institutions, but at the same time I think the migration policy has not changed a lot. It's not so open as you can see, for example, Canada, that Canada has a little bit more open system to receive a lot of migrants around the world. So obviously I can see that maybe that is the main challenge for the people who are not German, that we are studying here in Germany. So yeah, I think that is maybe the main. And also, because when I came to Wuppertal, I have not knowledge of German. Obviously, I started to study German from the beginning. Also, there was maybe another big challenge, no? The language, how to communicate with institutions, with the daily life, how to be involved and not only be in a capsule, but to be more involved with the society. And that has been a long process.
So, but you did it very successfully, because you're well known now at the University of Wuppertal. And so you're working not only in the academic field, you are also co-editor of a book of cultural representations of migrations from Central America, no, in the 21st century. So your research interests also revolve around these topics of migration, violence, and wars. And these are, so I can imagine these are full of tragic stories. And what does it mean working on these topics? And what motivates you to deal with these painful experiences on the daily basis? And what are your findings?
Well, that is very, I think for one side, personal reason, because obviously since August 1st of 2015, I became migrant because I moved to Mexico to study my master, and obviously that is a big difference when you are living in your country and after move to another country and to be in this level of label of migrant, you know, because you at that moment you feel that you lost most of your rights, and that is something that at the beginning for me was like shocking, because obviously I was not experimenting that in my country now. And
so you mean that you become more vulnerable?
Yes, definitely. Yes, studies? Definitely. Definitely, and the main point is also that you as a migrant, most of the time you don't have the opportunity to make pressure on the migration policy, and that is a little bit, I can say, contradiction, because you are suffering this migration policy, but you cannot do a lot. Yes. How to?
It depends not on you.
Yes, so that's why I started to read more about migration, and also in Mexico I met a lot of people who were working about Central American migration in different aspects, not only literature but also anthropological or sociological aspect, and that gave me a lot of feedback. And the idea of working on this book of cultural representation of Central American migration in this century started in Mexico, because obviously I could see how was the situation of most Central American migrants in Mexico, and at that time I thought it would be nice to work with two colleagues. One is Mauricio Espinosa from the University of Cincinnati, and the other is Ignacio Sarmiento, who is a professor at the University of New York at Fredonia. And they accepted to work in this, editing this book, and so we started the process in those years. So definitely has been a big topic for me, you know, not only for personal reason, but because also nowadays I can say that it's very influential on my thinking, no? Because now I can see the reality for other perspective, when it's not only, how can I say, no romantic view of the migration.
Yeah. What does it mean in the daily life?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but interesting. Looking forward to your book.
Thank you.
And you're not only a scientist, you're also a writer. More precisely, you're working as an essayist and as a poet, and you have taken part in international poetry festivals. I think you have written in Mexico, El Salvador, Nicaragua. Can you tell us a little bit about the themes, about the topics, and why do you write poems?
Oh, well, I started to write when I was a teenager. I think most of the teenagers start to write something, you know, like to express themselves. But at that time, I was not real conscious of what is the process of being a writer and what is the implications. And obviously nowadays I can know more because, well, the last few years I have been dedicated extremely only for literature. So mainly my topics are about social problems, political problems, now also migration issues. That has been, and the point is to write what I see, what I can experiment, and what are my readings.
Mm-hmm. So is it the case that the literature or writing the literature is a way also to come around with these topics, or to show your readers a special point of view?
Yes, because I think that is also like a necessity, because academic writing obviously has different language, different codes, formats, and you cannot express a lot of points, especially personal points, because that is not academic, you know. And that's why I felt the necessity that I need to write about more personal experience. And I think poetry is maybe one of the best way. Also essays and short stories. Mm-hmm. In my case, because other people can say, okay, I can do painting, but obviously I'm not a painter, so that just depends of each person.
Thank you. So if I may ask this question, so if you're thinking about the future, so what would be your vision? So what would be the best idea of future?
Well, I would like, that is very existential question, because definitely I would like to live in a world without wars, because definitely now we have this feeling of start wars and it's extremely anxious to read newspaper every day to see what is happening in the world, not only in Latin America, but also very close to us. And this also gives us like a conscious of how fragile is the life, you know, and can be stopped in one moment. And so for my future, I would like to have more calm. Maybe that would be an issue, and also more like confident in that I can have more security, you know. And yes.
And therefore, I can imagine literature is very important to get the imagination. What does it mean, peace again?
Yes, or definitely.
That war is not the normal thing.
Yes, or the only solution. So I think also for my writing, I have many ideas, and yes, I have many projects. So I would like to continue experiment, and not only in a formal way, but also linguistic, because that is also now that German is basically my daily language. I think has influence on my Spanish, on my also my writing, and also English, because all these three languages are the language of my daily life. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
much, Miroslava. It was a great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for the time, for the support, and for all the dialogue.
And this was episode 5 from Abel on Air, the podcast of the Abel Academy, with Miroslava Rosales. We hope you have a lot of fun listening to the podcast, and take a look at the show notes. You will find some translations down there, especially for the Spanish parts. And until the next episode, have a good time. Take care. Bye.
So would you like to read us one of your poems? You can decide in which language.
Okay, I will read it in Spanish.
If you will read it in Spanish, maybe can we get a summarize?
Yes, I will read one poem that I wrote in Mexico when I was living in Mexico City. That is about the Central American caravans. I wrote this poem in 2018. During that time, it was very, very hard, the situation, because there were a lot of caravans going to Mexico, and it was like divided society. One side wanted to welcome, and the other was like a more xenophobic. So there was just this two position. So it was like a necessity to write about them. And obviously this is like maybe a process of healing. And yes, so I wrote this poem that is a little bit long, but it was included in the book that I recently published, that is República del Excremento. So I will read in Spanish, and yes, I think I feel more comfortable reading in the language when I'm in a public.
Yes, please, start.
Okay, caravanas. Este país cruzado a diario por caravanas buscan las gotas de la esperanza allá en la tierra del águila calva. En la lejana frontera del norte, allá donde se dice, se piensa, se cree, habitan las serpientes, los coyotes, las lagartijas, las puntas de flechas y la sequía, las reciben gas lacrimógeno, milicias al son de los estallidos, golpes como del odio de Dios, puñetazos de bolas de fuego, hogueras de espinas y de sal, balas de goma, gas pimienta, pan podrido, fosas abiertas a la noche de los aullidos. Este país de polvo y de nopaleras, este país de abrazos suculentos, este país de leche agria en forma de navaja, en forma de político, este país del ámbar y de la jacaranda en primavera, en búsqueda constante de un arco iris para sus hijos. Ni aquí ni allá cabida existe para su dolor del tamaño de un desierto. No hay sitio para nosotros, dicen entre sí. No hay sitio para ustedes, les gritan. Dicen que soy mojada, que mi crimen es no llevar papeles. La autoridad de la muerte no sabe que yo soy de tierra fértil y que hablo la lengua del magma, que soy del aroma a coco y del sabor del níspero, que bailo pese a las despedidas y a las pocas monedas en mi bolsillo sobre el techo de un verano inagotable de luz amable, que persigo un fin más noble y que mi dignidad no se doblega ante ninguna bandera, ante las oraciones de los hipócritas. Allá en mi tierra de volcanes siempre llueve a cántaros y los grillos visitan los patios de las casas y las chicharras de marzo saben mi nombre, María Volcán. Soy María Volcán y el luto un pájaro adentro, el luto una caída de clavos en la boca, el luto la inflamación de un nervio. ¿A dónde el consuelo para mis pies bajo la aridez de la indiferencia? ¿A dónde mi hijo? ¿A dónde mi hija? ¿A dónde la matria como manto de lana abrazando mi corazón? Este país de agave en búsqueda de una melodía de afecto, en búsqueda permanente de los cuerpos. Su destino, huir de los tiroteos de las llamas, de los escombros del esplendor, de las calles de sangre acumulada y adornadas por cabezas colgando de los puentes como farolitos de Navidad. Las caravanas son el éxodo de la esperanza, necesitan de nuestros corazones de refugio para, en cualquier lugar del mundo, florecer.